Us, Torbjörn. Good morning. Good to see you. Those books should be arriving in Norway any day now. I was talking to Frederick in Sweden, and he's in the process now of sending out all the books to Norway. So that's good news. Finally, they're getting out there. But anyway, what's Frederick? Yes, good. I was just talking about you. I was just saying to Torbjörn that the books for Norway are probably on their way because you're doing the Norwegian books now. What's pal? Good to see you. You got your book right, pal? That's good. So I hope everyone's well. And today, oh, look at my hair. It's all standing up. Oh, I'm glad they arrived, Brad. Did you have a chance to look at some of the inscriptions? I hope they suited what you're after. What's Gaza? So Brad there, he's just had a hip replacement, so it's even good to see him here. Hope he's well. How's the recovery going, Brad? So, oh, good. I'm glad to hear. It was good on you, Brady. Brady's like my brother from another mother. We spent a lot of time together over the years. Craig, us, Brad. Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. I hope the recovery is really fast. Us, Craig. Good to see you, man. So anyway, today I wanted to talk about, I'm actually, in my next book, I've got a whole section on meditation for the martial artist. My watch just fell off. Meditation for the martial artist. And I'm actually thinking of doing a book on it, on that subject. So good. Good on you, pal. I want to do a book on that subject because it's a really, really important subject. And it's a little confusing for people sometimes. And there are people who, market and sell meditation when it's not, what they're really doing is not really meditation. That's fine. It's like people who do martial arts. Some people look at it and go, that's not fighting. Well, yeah, I'm sure it's not fighting. As long as they're not marketing it as not fighting, well, that's great. Us, Matthias, good to see you, man. So meditation is one of those things where it's very polarizing. Some people don't like the concept of religion. Some people are quite comfortable with it. Clearly, Sosai was very comfortable with it because his primary mentor, Sonei Chu, was well known as being very, very devoutly religious in his Buddhism. And when I say religion, I'm not referring to any one religion. All the religions profess the same thing. They all say that the world is full of suffering, and if you follow a prescribed course, you can be free of that suffering. The only difference between the religions is, of course, cultural and in terms of the timing of them as well. But essentially, meditation is what I would describe anyway as the Mike, good to see you. From sunny Western Australia. You are having all the rain, it was sunny here. Now we're having all the rain, it's sunny there. Even as I sit here, all I can smell is the moisture. After the rain, everything smells damp. And look at this, I'll show you. See all the geese? I lost all the geese because the water never comes through here. It always goes through there, but the water just streamed down there. And once it hit the geese, it just got sucked up into all the geese. And that was that. Hey, Jorge. Good to see you, man. Yep, indeed. So, back to the meditation. I think meditation is probably seriously the highest expression of the religious sentiment that you can get. Now, I know that some churches, some religions don't necessarily teach meditation, and they've built a whole body of dialogue and narrative around it that pushes people away. They say that meditation is wrong and this and that. But at the end of the day, meditation is the highest practice of any religion. If you look at yoga, for example, and yoga simply means union of the individual soul with God or with the Godhead. The yoga, as we know it, is based on a book called Yoga Sutras, written by a writer named Patanjali. So the Yoga Sutras it's a very small book. You can probably get a free version of it on Kindle somewhere even. There are so many translations. Some are good, some are bad, like everything. But the Yoga Sutras is the primary text of yoga. It's the book that all other yogas base themselves on or claim to. And the first line of the book says, "Herein begins an explanation of yoga." Then the second line says what yoga is. It says simply, yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind waves. That's it. In one sentence, yoga is all about calming down the undulations of the mind. Oh, Bill, I was just talking to you. I've been chatting to Bill because the US distributor is getting all the books ready and she needed a phone number. And here we are. Good to see you again, Bill. So yoga simply means stilling the mind, calming the mind, and maintaining that under pressure. It's a little bit like fighting. Gary O'Neill used to say to me that he understood completely that the art of fighting was in the brain, in the mind. And all he had to do, he's a 71 kilo guy fighting 90, 100, 110 kilo guys who are strong and fit and fast. All he had to do was bring them out of that stillness of the mind. And he said, I had them. As soon as they'd gone from that calmness to where they had to think before they acted, he said it was impossible for them to catch up with him because they were always processing the mind. So even in life, as you know, one of the greatest sentences ever uttered, beware of the emotional reactions to the inevitable fluctuations of the phenomenal world. The phenomenal world being the world of duality, light, dark, heat, cold, good, bad, happy, sad, and our emotional reactions to that affect the way we live. And meditation is probably the strongest tool to overcome that tendency towards emotional reactions. And when the first lesson in yoga says that yoga is nothing more than the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind waves, and then you look at the Christian Bible and it says, be still. It says, if therefore thine eye be single. In other words, there's a couple of different metaphors for that. If your consciousness is focused, we'll talk about that in a sec. But also, if your eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. So what that means simply is that if your brain is dissipated, if you can't concentrate, you've got no chance meditating. So what a lot of people actually call, Smack, good to see you. What a lot of people actually call meditation is nothing more than concentration. So the Yoga Sutras talks about, first of all, it talks about yam, niyam, okay, the things you should not do and the things you should do. And like the 10 Commandments, there's certain things which you shouldn't do. If you have a certain mode of behavior that is incompatible with sitting calmly, obviously it's not going to work. So just like all religions have prescriptions, suggestions how to behave and have what things to do and not to do. So things you shouldn't do, like you don't steal, you don't lie, you don't gossip, all these sort of things. And things you should do, stay healthy, read inspiring, uplifting material, go within and ask yourself the questions of life. Where have I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? That sort of thing. And then, so you'll find actually deep down, all the religions basically say the same thing, that the objective is to be still, be calm, and take your consciousness inside. And particularly, it's important to work with an erect spine. Be kind. Isn't that easy? Damn, it's just so easy. It's that simple. The erect spine is very important. If you look even in the book, by the way, and I digress as usual, this box is causing trouble because it was designed as a mailing box. Okay, so it's really just for books mailing out. Us, Rochelle, good to see you. And I thought rather than just leave a blank box, I'll put some designs on it. But of course, they're quite expensive. They're actually a surprisingly expensive item. So when people order the bulk copies and they get a big discount, well then, because they're buying it in bulk, the bulk orders come with no boxes. Boy, oh boy, was that a mistake. I'm starting to get people go, oh, God, where's my box? I only want the box, So anyway, I made a mistake. I only ordered a limited number of boxes compared to the books, knowing that a lot of them would be bulk orders or be delivered by hand. So anyway, these boxes, I reckon, if the first book became quite valuable, it was sold out, I reckon these boxes will be at a you'll be able to buy these on eBay in a couple of years for $200 a pop. But anyway, in the book, as you remember, there's whole sections on this sort of thing. The Eastern approach to meditation and the spinal centers, like that. So it's all about the spine. Meditation's number one rule is have an erect spine, even in the Bible. And remember that I'm not here to proselytize. I've never proselytized and I never will, but there are certain things in the Bible which make a lot of sense to me. They're very, very good. And, these days a lot of people are almost neurotic about their aversion to religion. And they listen to, people like Christopher Hitchens and those sort of people who are highly articulate and extremely skillful at debate, but they've done nothing, in my opinion, to ever disprove all the fundamentals of religion. They just misinterpret it. The latest scientific research supports what you're saying. After thousands of years of existing practice, mindfulness is the new catchphrase in psychology circles. Well, there you go. And it was just a matter of time. And, I could talk about this all day because it's my favorite pet subject. I even studied comparative religions at uni. But, as we go through the ages, man's consciousness rises and falls, and we've just come out of the dark ages and we're not far out of it. So there are certain things which still the mind can't necessarily grasp. And this is why certain things such as mindfulness is starting to become more popular. The catch is when they do it from a scientific viewpoint, it's the blind leading the blind. They understand that mindfulness is what they're looking for. They just don't know where to find it. And of course, they will do everything they can to avoid turning to a religious teacher. It's like Kary Mullis, the great Nobel Prize winning scientist who came up with polymerase chain reaction. There you go, Rochelle. How's that out of my memory? PCR. He won the Nobel Prize in 92. He was so happy he got drunk and got stoned. And they said, nah, you need to behave yourself because it's a Nobel Prize. So they held it off for a year until he sobered up. And then he got it in 93. But he wrote a fantastic book called Dancing in the Mind Field. And in that, he points out that scientists are often their own worst enemy because they place their opinion before the scientific principle. And not all scientists, but the example he uses, and I'm not saying that I necessarily agree, is the example he uses is belief is irrelevant. It's whether or not you can prove something scientifically. And he said it's a little bit like being innocent until proven guilty. He says quite often many scientists will say you're guilty until proven innocent the thing he refers to Oh, yeah, it's a great book, isn't it? Well, Rochelle will know I'm talking about the chapter that he talks about astrology. And in astrology, he says every scientist in the world just scoffs at astrology. He said, but there's not a single one of them who's ever applied the scientific principle to prove it or disprove it. And he said, and as long as it hasn't been disproved, there is no argument against it. And religion is the same. You know, the word religion comes from the Latin root religere, which means, I believe, that which is necessary, you know, that which is religious to us, if something is religious to us. And it's easy for me to digress here, isn't it? But the point is, everything that everyone does is aimed at one of two things. And I've even heard, what's that guy who wrote that book, The Power Within? He does all the lecture tours about, you know, he gets people in big groups and does these really cool weekend sessions. What's his name? The American guy. But I heard him once say, well, you know, after 23 years of observation of the man, of humans, I've come to the conclusion that everything everyone does is aimed at one or two things: the removal of pain and the experience of happiness. And when I heard that, I had a bit of a giggle, because there's a great book which I really love called The Science of Religion, which was actually a transcription of a lecture that Yogananda gave in 1920. And in that, he points out that awaken the giant within you. Yes, Tony Robbins. There you go, Craig. Tony Robbins, awaken the giant within you. After 23 years of human observation, I've come. Carrie Wallace, that's it. Carrie Wallace. I've come to the conclusion that everything everyone does is aimed at one or two things: the removal of pain, the experience of joy, happiness. And that book, The Science of Religion, which was written in 1920, so 101 years ago, Yogananda points out that everything everyone does, whether it's a philanthropist donating billions or a serial killer out to kill his next victim, they're all, no, not Bill Superfoot Wallace, Carrie Wallace. They're all aimed at two things. One is the removal of pain or want, and the second is the unbroken, continuing, ever-existing experience of bliss, which he says we mistake for short-term pleasure. So that's why people do drugs and drink alcohol and so on, because it's the closest thing they can get to that blissful feeling that you get when you meditate. And I must say, when you train seriously, when you train with full concentration, you get the same buzz. I don't meet, in fact, the only other person I ever met who's experienced it directly, personally, I've met two people, and one of them was Sosai. And he talks about it. You know, he says that to him, that being drenched in sweat gives him the same experience that the Zen master seeks in meditation. Well, I think both of them you have to do. Oh, good. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Will you have more time to get here, Patty, or not? It's the same for us. So anyway, that's the key to one of the things is, first of all, identification. Are we this body? If we are this body, we just a bunch of proteins and fats and so on, or are we a soul and we possess a body? You know, once you identify as a soul on some sort of spiritual journey, and the body is just a tool to help you get there, well, then everything changes, your focus changes. And that's where in the book I quoted what it was like to be a warrior. Look, the whole book really is about being a warrior. I don't even know if I can find it, but you know, where Walt Whitman points out that all the poems of all the poets that ever existed were about one thing, and that is the theme of war and the making of warriors, you know. And I've got this quote in here. If I can find it, I will, but I pretty well remember it off the top of my head. When you become a little enlightened, you begin to compare your experiences in the waking state with your experiences in the dream state. And in the dream state, you know that's essentially unreal. So therefore, you start to doubt the essential reality of our experiences in the waking state. And that at that point, you then become compelled to seek answers, to understand the truth of life. And in the moment that compulsion drives you to find answers, you become a warrior. And then the rest of your life is driven to find the answers to those questions. What's it all about? Where am I from? Why am I here? Where am I going? What can I do about it? When we know such things as this, what do we do with it? Live quietly with it or sell it? Exactly. Oh, man, I can tell you now. I've met some amazing people. I have a friend, I mentioned Kartik before. Kartik's a good friend, meditates 8 hours, and he's one of the world's great mathematicians. He's a scientist. He's a mechanical engineer. And his productivity, I mean, tenured scientists generally have to come up with something to justify their tenure, and he's pumping out patents and things at the rate of knots. But he meditates 8 hours a day, and from midnight Friday to 1 a.m. Sunday every weekend, he does a 25-hour non-broken, non-stop meditation. So that's pretty spectacular. And people like that, you'd never see him writing a book about it or going on class tour or selling an app. That's for sure. You know, it's amazing. But anyway, the reason I think meditation is really important is, one, Sosai pointed out that the martial arts is a spiritual journey. Sosai's teacher, Gichin Funakoshi, his famous saying, the ultimate aim of the art of karate is perfection of the characters of its participants, you know, and by perfection of character, logically you mean a spiritual event. It's not, there's no other way to describe that. This is a perfect cup of tea, by the way. And look, Sanji Panji, this is from Kylie Baker in Melbourne. This is my go-to cup now. It just keeps the tea hot for hours. Yeah, there you go. Daniel got caught too, same as Paddy Pinto. Kisholaya Majumda, good to see you. We're talking, namaste. We're talking about meditation and the Yoga Sutras. But anyway, in the Yoga Sutras, the first 8 steps, right? The first 2 are yam niyam, which basically means the things you shouldn't do and the things you should do. And then asan, or posture. And this is what we have to talk about. Now, most of the yoga that we see in the world, there's 8 steps. Most of the yoga we see in the world is stuck at this 3rd step, and to a degree the 4th step. The 3rd step is asan, or posture. And people think that they're talking about the various yoga postures that you do. No, that's wrong. That's like saying that the ultimate aim of karate is the perfect kanku kata. It's not. It's a tool to get there. And the ultimate objective of all those exercises is to prepare the body for long bouts of meditation with the back ramrod straight. And to do that, you have to be healthy. You cannot sit there unbroken, unrestless, if you're not strong and healthy. So that's why those practices are done, even though for the most part, once you get into yoga and you realize it gives your body a very, very live, youthful appearance, then the ego takes over again and you lose track with all that other stuff. Okay, so yam niyam, the first 2, the do's and don'ts. In other words, you've got to get your attitude right, your value system right, all that sort of thing. Then the 3rd one is asan, posture. Well, what that means is simply preparing the body for meditation. And meditation, above all, requires a straight spine. Even in the Bible, it says, I am the voice in the wilderness crying, make straight the way of the Lord. Well, the metaphor of that is it's talking about the spine. Make straight the way of the Lord. The way of the Lord literally means the movement of the spiritual energy up and down the spine. There's even, I wish I could find it, man, because it's fascinating. Some of the Old Testament references to meditation and so on. If I can find it, great. If I can't, it doesn't matter. But it's really worth looking for. Here we go. Let's see what I can find. There we go. Isaiah 35:8. And a highway shall be there, and it will be called the way of holiness, and it will be for those who walk on the way. The unclean shall not journey on it. Wicked fools will not go about it. It doesn't mean that you've got some sort of social arrogance saying that the unclean can't. It just means that people whose consciousness isn't ready for meditation won't ever entertain the thought of meditating. There's no doubt about it. And the road shall go through that once deserted land. This is a version of the Bible I don't necessarily like, but it will be named the highway of holiness. It'll go through the once deserted land. Well, the body, it abandons you. Remember, we talked about the body being a treacherous friend. It abandons you. There's nothing left in the end. There's nothing, it becomes a wasteland. It's tired, it's old, but through it all, you have the spine and the meditation taking the energy up and down the spine. It will be named the highway of holiness. That's in India, in the Indian yogic traditions, the spine is the center of the soul, and the spinal centers. I talk about in the book a little bit. And fools will never walk there. In other words, if you're not ready, you're just not ready. And a highway shall be there. This is the version. The unclean shall not pass over it. And it talks about later on the stones of fire on the highway. The stones of fire on the highway. Well, the stones of fire simply is the biblical times way to describe energy. A stone of fire, if you can imagine, it was like a ball of energy. And that represents the spinal centers, and it talks about the 7 churches and the 7 candles. And these are all metaphoric references to the spine. So anyway, that being what it is, the most important thing to remember is having an erect spine and being healthy enough to be able to sit unbroken for lengths of time. Okay, now we sit in Seiza, and it's very hard. I'm sitting in Seiza now, and I can tell you now my feet are going to sleep. It's very hard to sit in Seiza for long periods of time. So that's why people sit in Padmasana, or the cross-legged pose, or if you're not flexible enough to do that, well then just cross-legged. But like we were talking about last week, if you're not flexible in the lower back, you start to fall backwards. So if I was meditating, I wore a tight t-shirt so you can see all my Christmas pudding. So if I'm meditating cross-legged, I need to be able to sit with my back straight. But you see my knees are up because I don't have the flexibility to sit in Padmasana with my feet down. If you have that flexibility, there's no better posture to sit because it anchors your shape. But clearly, if I was to sit here meditating, within a few minutes, my back would start to slouch because I don't have the flexibility. So that's where things like this little block can be helpful, or even better, these little cushions. So this is why in Zen they sit on those cushions, because by sitting up, now you can see that it allows my knees to drop a little bit, and it allows my spine to stay erect for much longer. Is it necessary to sit on the ground? No, 100% no. Most of my life and most of the meditation I've ever done is sitting in chairs. When you go into one of the things I like when I travel is go and visit different churches, and you see the different types of chairs. And sometimes you see chairs. I went to a cathedral in Lucerne, and it was dated to the 13th century, and it had the most amazing chairs. And these chairs, even though the people there I don't think really realized, the chairs were actually designed to assist in meditation. It allowed you to sit there and meditate in certain techniques for a long time. So you can see by even just raising your butt a little bit, it allows you to straighten your spine. If I wanted to straighten it even further, I'd put that on, or if you like, put it underneath there, and that lifts my butt even further. And you see now it's starting to get really easy to sit with a straight spine. So the first thing you need to do is calm the mind. Meditation is nothing more than single-minded focus, concentration. So there's not much good of, coming home from a frenetic day and meditating with your mind full of worries and concerns. Yogananda wrote a beautiful poem, a little poem. He said, "The child is busy with play. The youth is busy with senses. The man is busy with worries. Who thinks of God, yet he is the something else that all are seeking." So it's interesting. You can't let the brain be dissipated. The first thing. So we go back to the Yoga Sutras. Yam, niyam, the do's and don'ts. Asan. The next one is pranayam, or energy control. Often pranayam is translated as breath control, but it's not. Pran is energy, ki, chi. Pran is energy, yam is control. So it means energy control, but of course, the most direct way to do that is through the breath, so therefore it's often called breath control. So pranayam, controlling the energy, essentially through the breath. And then the next one is pratyahara, which means internalization. So you have the spine straight, you calm the mind, and the easiest way to do that is through breath. Take some deep breaths. And this is asan comes first. Remember, before you start to practice the breath energy control comes posture. So you have to have the right posture. You can't meditate by sitting there like this and think that you're going to get anywhere, simply because the spine is wrong. The energy moves in the spine. Make straight the way of the Lord. Okay? Make straight the spine for energy movement. So it never hurts before you meditate just to do some stretches, spinal stretches. Just do this sort of thing. Just let the head dangle. Stretch the spine. Stretch the spine. Now there are prescribed ways to do that. I'm just showing you ways you can do it. You don't have to sit on the seat to do it. You just stretch your spine. Stretch your spine and give your spine a little bit of strength and health and keeping it straight. That's why I'm always saying the most important thing as you get older in flexibility is spinal integrity. And then you sit with your spine straight. Now, one of the ways to do that is bring the hands back here, like that. So you sit up like this. You have your chin essentially horizontal. I know there are different schools of thought. For example, Zen Buddhism when they meditate, they meditate through the subconscious. So basically you've got what could be simply described as 3 levels of consciousness. I'm going to show you here in my trusty little Zen brush app. But there are basically three levels of consciousness. So if you can imagine, better turn the pencil on. So that's the eyeball, right? That's the eye. Okay. When your vision is straight ahead, you're essentially in the conscious state. When you're conscious, you're looking around horizontally. When your eyes drop down, you're in the subconscious state. So quite often, when you're drawing on your subconscious and you're thinking deeply, you'll look down. But when your eyes go up, you're in the superconscious. So often you'll see images of saints, Buddha and Jesus and so on, where their eyes will be up, or they'll have the dot here or the thing on their head. All these are just metaphorical references to the superconscious state. Now, you can meditate with your eyes at any one of those things, but the best way is to have your eyes slightly up. And that's another way to understand the metaphor of when thine eye be single. By single, it means by focusing on the spiritual eye. So it doesn't mean you're cross-eyed like that and you get a headache. What it means is basically your vision goes from horizontal conscious to slightly above. And when you do that, the easiest way to do it is kind of tell yourself that you're looking out through the spiritual eye, up like that. Okay, now that's just one way to approach it. The most important thing is to develop the regular habit of meditation. So we do our sanshin, we do our tensho, we do 5 minutes of stretching, and that 5 minutes of stretching primarily focuses on the spine, and then you just sit down, you sit nice and straight. I like to sit here because I'm not flexible enough, or on a chair, and that way you don't have to worry about any of this. You sit with your spine straight, and the next step after pranayama, so you do some breathing. Your spine's nice and relaxed, and then you take a nice deep breath, and then you let the breath go, and you don't worry about it anymore. You just let the body breathe naturally. One of the dangers of pranayama is the concept that you have to consciously control your breath when you meditate, but nothing could be further from the truth. What is natural is to just let the breath go naturally, but be conscious of the breath. It's actually, I find it can be very difficult to watch the breath without wanting to control it. So you just watch it. And when it comes in, one of the easiest ways, and look, there are different levels of meditation teachings and things like this, but one of the simplest ways is as you breathe in, you simply say to yourself, I am breathing in. And as you breathe out, you say to yourself, I am breathing out. You watch the air come in and out of the nostrils. You don't try and hold the breath like that. You simply let the body breathe. And you watch it. When it goes in through the nostrils, you say, I am breathing in. When it naturally wants to breathe out, you say to yourself, I am breathing out. There's nothing magic in the words, I am breathing in or breathing out. All it does is simply focus your attention on the movement of the breath. And that is the key. That's the most important thing, is being able to stay focused on the breath. Because it's by focusing on the breath, it cuts out all the other things. Yeah, the lotus position, the Padmasana. If you can do that, you can do that. But I can't do the Padmasana properly. And yeah, when you meditate, look, whether your eyes are open or closed, it doesn't matter. The important thing is the angle of the eyes. You just have the eyes slightly up. It's though you're looking just a couple of meters above. You're looking away if there's something like a wall 5 meters away. There can be something on the wall, and you look up at that, and then you just close your eyes. And whether your eyes are open or closed, it's not the important thing. The important thing is the erect spine and focusing on the breath. So the next step after pranayama, the energy, is pratyahara. And what that means is going within, is turning within. It's taking the 5 senses, which are normally like energy lines and always running out. The energy is always running out. You've got sensory input by the ton. You've got smells. You've got sounds all the time. Non-stop. Pranayama, energy control, slowly allows you to turn off those sensory telephone lines and reverse the energy flow within, and that's pratyahara. That means internalization. That means going within. And that's the closest thing that you will find to what they refer to as mindfulness. So the mindfulness is based on all of those things. The easiest way to be mindful is to watch the breath. When you watch the breath, the energy, by its own nature, tends to return inwards simply by watching the breath. If your eyes are open or closed, it doesn't matter. Another interesting thing too is when I first started meditating when I was a kid, I was using a book by Tohei Koichi called Key in Daily Life. So I used to meditate his way, which was an Aikido way of meditation on the Tanden. And that would have your eyes going down because of the Japanese tradition is to meditate through the subconscious. But another interesting thing is it's impossible to fall asleep if your eyes are up. I find that very interesting. And I know over the years, as I've gotten tired in meditation and I start to get drowsy, the first thing I notice is if my eyes are open. I'll be like that. The first thing I notice is my eyes drop. And when they go down, then you fall asleep. But if you can keep the eyes up, it's impossible to fall asleep. That's very interesting. So pratyahara means internalization. And then the next step is dharan, which means concentration. So that's the most important step. And I always believe this is one reason why when the Japanese get into proper meditation, they'll really kill it, because their ability to focus on a single point is tremendous. So that single-mindedness is the key to going deep with the meditation. And then once you get that concentration on the single point, and for example, it can be the breath. So you simply concentrate very deeply on the breath. And then while you're concentrating on the breath, you go, did I leave the iron on? Oh, no, it's okay. I turned it off. What am I going to do at training today? And then 15 minutes later, you realize you haven't concentrated at all, that you've been through 1,000 different thoughts. That's because of the habits of the mind. What in Buddhist tradition, they talk about the monkey mind. It just jumps from one thing to the next. But gradually with practice, you just very patiently keep bringing it back. And when it moves off, you bring it back by focusing back on the breath. And focusing on the breath is the easiest way to meditate. And then you add, like TM, Transcendental Meditation, for example, they'll give you a mantra, which is a key sound. And the most famous sound of all, of course, is Om. So, and the word Om is the seed word for Amen, Amin, all these different religious words, Om, Amen, are all the same. But anyway, Om. So if you really want a chant word, well, then let it be Om. So when you breathe in and breathe out, you can say that word. If you don't want to, that's okay. You just concentrate on the breath. And as you breathe in, you just say, I'm breathing in. And I'm breathing out. And then you sit there nice and relaxed. And you maintain focus on that single subject. Now, you can see the crossover into martial arts, because when you train with deep concentration, I mean really deep concentration, so that you actually, to a degree, to start with, you lose awareness of what's going around and you become absorbed in the chant of the kiais and the movement. And you feel the consciousness center in the spine. And then you have the closest thing that you'll get to a moving meditation. Strictly speaking, that's not really possible. But anyway, but you can see the crossover into meditation because of the deep single-minded focus that is necessary to master a technique. And that's where, when Sosai talks about his experiences in the mountain, where he would concentrate so deeply and train so hard, he'd become totally absorbed. That was the word he used, totally absorbed in the sweat, he would experience what the Buddhist monks would talk about, that experience of blissfulness. And I think it's one way to look at it. I've always looked at it like this, is that getting away from different degrees only in kind, the one thing that a man can do, that a human being can do that an animal can't, is meditate. Animals eat, we eat. Animals sleep, we sleep. Animals procreate, we procreate. It's the second strongest instinct we have. Animals defend territory, we defend territory. The only difference is, instead of using our teeth and claws, we use lawyers and judges and paperwork. It's the same thing. Animals eat, sleep, procreate, and defend territory. We do the same thing. So strictly speaking, unless and it's just different of degrees. We protect our territory through having sophisticated jobs and making money and all that. But at the end of the day, it's only difference in degree, not in kind. The one thing that a human being can do, animals communicate, animals make tools, animals do all those things. We just do it on a more sophisticated level. You've only got to see the way beavers make dams, the way birds make nests. It's the same thing. But what we can do that they can't is meditate and actually affect the rate of our spiritual evolution. So unless you're meditating, you're really, I guess nothing but a glorified mammal, which is what scientists will have you believe. That's what they want you to believe. Well, some scientists, not all, but some scientists will, they'll say there is nothing, there is no afterlife, there is nothing beyond. You're just nothing but a sophisticated mammal. Well, if that's your attitude and that's what you want to be, well, then all power to you. But it's not going to fulfill, because at some stage you go, there must be more to it than this. And over the years, so many people have got in touch with me. I used to train with you 25, 30 years ago. They were such good years, and I want to get back to that, because it just felt more fulfilling in my life. Well, even the word hum is the Buddhist, the Tibetan Buddhists, they talk about hum, so hum, om, amen. They're all the same. They're all come from the same key word. And when people who are, that into the spiritual side of it, they read the Bible, and the Bible says, in the beginning was the Word. Well, the Word isn't the written word. The word is the vibration, and the word is Om. And what happens is, when you go deeper and deeper in meditation, and there are certain techniques you can use, you can tune into that astral sound. And that's the sound of the big motor of the universe, is the sound of Om. In the beginning was the word, Om. And so, by all means, Mac, I love using Om. I get a whole body vibration. Yes, very, very valuable. And you go past that body vibration too, and the deeper you relax, everything slows down, even to the point where, you don't talk about it because people say you're insane, but I've been sitting with people and the breathing tends to stop. You think about it, the only reason you breathe is to oxygenate the body. But if you're so perfectly relaxed that even the heart slows down and the lungs slow down, well, the body's use of oxygen slows right down. So therefore the heart rate, the breathing rate slows right down too. And sometimes you swear you swear you're only breathing once every 30, 40, 50 seconds, once every minute. But as soon as you become conscious of it anyway, as soon as you realize that your breathing has almost stopped, well, then it draws you back to the body, you see. And as soon as that happens, well, then the breathing goes back to normal again. Anyway, this is why I think the meditation is so important to martial arts. And everything Sosai wrote, he constantly wrote about the martial arts being a spiritual journey. Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. That's so funny talking. Lobsang, I must show you a drawing. In fact, oh man, I'm sure I've got it. I did a drawing when I was about 13. I swear I could find it, man. You'd laugh. You'd have a look at it and laugh. But Lobsang Rampa, I used to love his books. In your view, where does the I reside? Well, that's interesting because the I is the ego. So as long as there's a consciousness of I, there's a consciousness of separation. And I find that when you meditate very deeply, the sense of I disappears altogether. But as long as we're in the body, then we can't be free of the ego, because the ego is just simply the individualized expression of the whole. That's why yoga says yoga means union of the individualized soul with the Godhead, or with the complete, the whole. So it's a trick question. Where does the I reside? Well, as long as the ego is well and true, well, then the I exists in the consciousness alone, and we express it through the body. So when we get the identification wrong, then we think the I is the body. This is me. But it's even common language doesn't describe the body in that way. We don't say I am sore. We say my body is sore, or my bicep is sore. My body. We don't identify it as me. But quite often, it's very easy to lose awareness of the separation between the soul and the body. So good question, Mike. I would say that as long as we're conscious of the ego, then the I exists in the consciousness, and it's expressed through the body. But once we start to realize that we are so much more than the body, and the ego is just an individualized expression, then the I expands. And that's where concepts of compassion and empathy come in, and forgiveness, particularly forgiveness, because the I, the individualized ego, expands more and more and more until it embraces everything. So there's my answer to that, Mike. If you read the book The Third Eye. Yeah, he was an old Englishman. He just called himself Lobsang Rampa. The Third Eye was probably the first spiritual book that I ever read. Yeah, myself. You say myself or myself. Which one is it? Myself. I'm just going to see if I can find a little illustration. I'm not going to waste time, but you remember that I think on the cover of The Third Eye, there was this illustration of a really old man. And I think one of the first serious drawings I ever did was that old man on the cover of the book, The Third Eye. The problem with Lobsang Rampa is he talked about something which in many respects he shouldn't have, because he talked about the results and the external side of it. He didn't really talk about the proper way to get there. So this is why so many, psych hospitals and so on are full of people who have taken this the wrong way, because you are moving energy. Okay, breath will move and control energy, and if it's done wrongly, it's like putting 50,000 volts through a 240 volt lamp. It'll just explode. Well, people's, psych hospitals are full of people who have taken it a little too far. One of the dangers, I personally think, is when you talk about certain types of yoga, that will teach you to control deeply the energy without learning how to concentrate the energy, without learning to control it very much. Yeah, he was more or less a fraud, but I think he was a harmless fraud. I think he was just someone who, we're talking about Lobsang Rampa, the old English plumber, I think he was. Thanks, Brad. I really appreciate that. And to all my Patreon family, thank you. It really makes a difference. Thank you for reminding me, Brad. You know, I know when people talk about making YouTube videos, you've got to ask people to subscribe and hit the like button and, you know, hit the notification bell and Patreon. Yeah, look, I'm just really grateful that you all come along and join in, you know, but I'm so grateful that some people really are kind enough to think, all right, well, there's a little bit of value there, so I'm going to contribute a little bit each month. It really makes a difference. And I think in the long run, I'm going to make sure that is, you know, not taken advantage of myself either. So he's kind of a fraud. He definitely wasn't a spiritually minded. Well, he was spiritually minded, but he definitely wasn't someone qualified to be teaching the things that he taught. He was just someone who experienced certain things or probably read certain things and capitalized on it and probably made a fortune. You know, so yeah. But I think meditation is vital, and those keys that I just gave you are really important. First of all, you've got to get your value system in place. You can't expect to meditate deeply if your values and your belief system are all screwed up. You know, you can't go around ripping people off in the corporate world or stealing people's things, or, you know, and expect that the rest of your life is going to be okay. But then you go asan. Asan is posture, so it means you need a healthy body. And this is why I think karate can almost qualify as a religion of sorts, because everything it does is beneficial to you in the long run. But the third step, make sure your body is healthy and you're able to sit with a nice, straight, erect spine. Then the third step, make sure your body is healthy and you're able to sit with a nice, straight, erect spine. Then the fourth thing after that is pranayama, or bringing the energies under control. And it doesn't just mean breath control. It also means winding in your habits. Okay, so if your habit is to drink excessively, or if your habit is to burn your energy in the wrong way, burning the candle at both ends, well, then that's also part of energy control, pranayama. You have to have sufficient energy in the body system so that you're able to meditate with deep concentration. Then the next step is pratyahara, or internalization. You bring the energy in, your energy that's running out the senses constantly. You draw it back in. You take breath, you draw it in. You focus on the breath, and by focusing on the breath, I am breathing in, I am breathing out, that allows you then to gradually calm down the senses. And it gets to the point where you don't even have to say, I am breathing in, I am breathing out. You can go to in and out, and then you simply watch the breath. And that's where it steps off beyond what I'm talking about. That's when you can go and find a qualified meditation teacher and get the techniques that go beyond that. And then concentration, dharan. Concentration means focusing the mind on a single point. Okay, whether that point is your breath, so your concentration's up there, and actually what will happen is you'll start to see that single point. And then the next steps, dhyan and samadhi. So those last three are the key ones. Dharan, dhyan, samadhi. That's when you really go internalized, and you're talking about a different level there. And when Mas Oyama talked about experiencing what the Zen monk experiences, that's what he's talking about. You have this 360-degree super conscious awareness. When you do it with kumite, it's like you know what they're doing before they're doing it, but at the same time you have a deep compassion, so that everything you do is harmless. It's dominating, but it's harmless. And there's nothing but this intense focus, concentration, and bliss, if you like. So meditation is the key. That's the thing that separates the human from the animal. Yes. Yeah. Well, look, some of the most mindful people don't have certain limbs. There's certainly the energy flows through the limbs, and so when you lose a limb, it affects the energy flow. But as long as your spine is sound, then you can still have manipulation of your spiritual evolution. But even with a broken back, you still have an awareness of I. It just tends to affect the energy pretty seriously. Can we lose our mindfulness and achieve the same? Well, I don't think so. You can lose a limb and it doesn't affect your mindfulness at all. But when your mind is burned, is frayed, certain things you've done have put 50,000 volts through that 50-volt lamp. That's why drugs and alcohol are so terrible, because they literally fry the brain and there's no coming back. It takes a long time to come back after you fry your brain with drugs. And touch wood, if there's any around. You avoid that like a plague. Toshko-san. Usia. How are you, Toshko-san? And before we all go off to meditate, look, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks, Mac. You're very kind. But take those simple steps. You do your sunshin, you do your tension, you have a stretch, and then you take another minute or so to stretch the spine, and then you find a comfortable seat, whether it's a chair or a cushion. Elevate your backside so you don't slouch. As soon as you start to slouch, in meditation, if you start to slouch, you simply bring your posture back up again, pull your shoulder blades together, and sit with nice erect spine. Have the chin horizontal, don't let it drop. Have the eyes slightly above. Whether they're open or closed doesn't matter. If they're open, well, it's good to focus on something. That's why people talk about focusing on a candle, like it or a lump. It's up to you. It never hurts, but it can play tricks with your mind as well. So you just have your eyes up, and then you internalize. You watch the breath. I'm breathing in. I'm breathing out. One day we'll actually do a meditation together. It'll blow your mind how really simple it is if you have the right techniques. It's not sophisticated. There's nothing difficult about it, but it is the highest expression of religious truth, is meditation. And it's the one thing that we as humans can do that our animal brothers and sisters can't: meditate. So anyway, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoy getting together with you every week. Let's focus on getting some kata done. I don't know which kata you want to work, Mike, but your kata is probably better than my kata, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I am working on a new kata. Isn't that arrogant? But it's not a new kata. It's actually an old kata done. Aiden, good to see you, man. Everybody remember Aiden? Thanks, Rochelle. I do my Wu Chi posture after my exercise. Very good. Look, doesn't matter what you do, as long as it allows you to strengthen and have a nice, straight, healthy spine. But anyway, thanks everybody for coming along. Have a nice weekend, like Torbjörn says. Appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you next week. My Patreon family, thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. And if you haven't got your book, grab one. I'm getting good feedback. I'm really getting some great feedback from the book. So anyway, Aiden, the stair runner, that's the one. Gazza was training with Aiden when he did all the 10. So you should too. Us, good on you, Bill. Good to see you. Thank you, Toshiko-san. I'm not too sure who you are, Toshiko-san. Sounds like someone named Toshiko-san. But anyway, thanks for coming along. Sven, I'll speak to you next week, guys, if not before. Us.